Hey there, this is Archetype Moon with Star Siren Astrology coming to you in this full moon in Aries. This full moon in Aries has been a 6-month cycle. It is a culmination, as all full moons are. However, if you think back on 6 months ago, where were you? Where were we all? At the end of March, COVID was just ramping up. You know, the springtime is happening, Aries season is like where the flowers are blooming, our sexuality is like blossoming, we're ready to like get out and mingle, we're ready to start things, spring clean, we're ready to let things go and move things ahead, you know? And instead we were met with quarantine, lockdown, the whole world, borders shutting down, people separated from families breaking up, all sorts of things. And that challenge to that impulse to move and to create and to start things new has been met with these external reflections of authority or rules or cause and effect, like how is your movement, how are your actions going to impact the whole? And we've seen that in a very real way. And that is because this year, Aries is being squared by Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter in Capricorn. You know, ruling external authority, ruling karma, cause and effect, ruling government, the structures, ruling the whole. So it's been challenging to that part of us that desires freedom and to do things our own way and to rebel and to create newness, you know. And it's also given us a lot of fire to meet some of those institutions, some of those external structures and authority figures that we've placed in power, that we've built up, and it's met it with this need for change. Like, yeah, this might have been happening since the foundations of our country, and it's time to fucking change, you know? And so it brings this volatility, it brings this power and this fire and this passion to slice through the shit that that the individual needs to be liberated of, and because the individual is coming head to head with the external authority, with the governmental structures and the power. It's coming to a head of how do we navigate our own physical fire and our will and desires with the whole, you know. And we've seen this in a way of the individuals rising up for and asking for change in real practical and forceful, fierce ways. And it's also looked a lot like people saying, hey, wait a minute, individual who's not wearing a mask or who doesn't want to get vaccinated or who whatever, wait a minute. How are you impacting the whole? How are you impacting the people of color and the people of different ethnicities and genders and sexual orientations? You know, it's saying, okay, look at the elderly, look at these more vulnerable subgroups of society, and check yourself, check your fire, check your consumption or your freedom and your privilege when you act, when you move, right? And so it's creating this conflict. It's also creating this opportunity, I think, to be able to allow the individual to refine their fire, to refine their desires and their actions, and making sure that it is supporting the systems and the structures that they are aligned with. And it's also giving the individual this passion and this drive to slice through and unhook from some of the oppressive systems that they are not aligned with, right? And then it's also showing us, I think, in a really big way, that it's less about the individual's freedom and choice and choosing to eat healthy and choosing to recycle and choosing, you know, to change their lives and do these things, when we have corporations and people of power and systems and structures that are upholding our society and holding certain individuals down, oppressing, and also completely destroying the earth at an alarming rate, to where it's how many thousands of individuals can we educate and get to like choose to recycle and buy less plastic than the other store selling more plastic, when it's like actually it's a systemic problem that needs to be addressed. And so I do think that there's this refinement of the systems, refinement of the authority, and the karma and the accountability and responsibility that actually we need to take as a whole, and that we need to force the corporations and the structures that we are individually plugging into and supporting, then we need to have them take accountability and responsibility for their actions, instead of it being projected onto the individual decisions. Then it's also giving us, as the individual, this time to deeply refine and allow our egos, our fire, to be humbled. And not just humbled, like, are we willing to take in the medicine during this Mars in retrograde? Are we willing to allow this conjunction of the full moon with Chiron, the wounded healer, to bring up the parts of us, the parts of our egoic desires that push and fight and act in selfish ways, or act in impulsive ways that don't serve our body, our earth, or our communities? And also, one of the biggest things I feel is this shame, this dogma, this tradition, these religions that have systematically oppressed and attacked the individual, the fire, the ego and the desires of the flesh, of our body, of our individual intuitive impulses, seeding poisonous, toxic morality, religious spirituality, asceticism, of letting the body go, of separating from our earthly desires and our earthly connection, and not trusting that the individual, if given the fuel and the space and the support and the container to grow and to truly listen to its intuition, would choose harmful things. Like, do we believe that our desires, like our true core desires, would lead to destruction and chaos and selfishness and evil and raping and murdering and polluting and enslaving? Do we really believe that that is the core of our desires? Or has it been the oppression? Has it been the victimization and the shame and the guilt and the hiding it and calling it evil and wrong and all of these things that cause our ego and our desires to come out in these contorted, unintegrated, wrathful, perverted, egoically selfish ways? You know, it's like we have a society that is so egoic, so obsessed with war and sex and carnality and all of that, and then they also shame it and taboo and just call it evil. You know, everything about that is called evil, and we need to separate and enlighten ourselves and detach from, instead of holding it, drawing it in, and learning how to be refined and integrated inside of that. You know, I don't buy that people's true desires would lead us to this. I think that it is the shame and the oppression that causes our egoic desires to come out in these destructive, to self and to other ways. And I think that is very obvious when you see the people of religions, and when you see the people that have created the threads of Christianity and other religions that are an aesthetic, that are a need to release and separate ourselves from the earth, separate ourselves from the feminine, call her evil. Those are the ones that are raping and murdering and enslaving. Those are the ones responsible for the most of colonization at this time. You know, how many priests and pastors and gurus have been manipulating and molesting and raping their followers and the children, you know? Anyways, I could go on, but I really do think that this wounded Chiron, this journey to actually heal the individual, heal our relationship to our fire, our instinctual body, our connection to earth, our connection to our carnal, primal, animalistic instincts, will liberate and allow us to heal the parts of us that become enslaved and manipulated and choose to take power over and get powerless, and thus creating these systems that oppress and feed in to jobs and corporations and relationships that soul drain, you know? And so I'm a full fucking ally and a cheerleader for the fire, for Aries, for Mars. Like, it is time to allow our fire and our desires to be so fucking honored and devoted to, that we bring them into integrity, that we bring them into refinement, that we slash and we slice through the egoic illusions and the addictions and the craving and the impulsive behaviors that would cause us to actually hurt ourselves and the other, would cause us to separate the ego and the soul, the body and the spirit, so that we can actually heal that fear of our mortality, of our need to control, of our feeling of separateness. You know, let the warrior come home to the fucking queen. You know, it's coming, Aries from Pisces. And the moon was in Pisces conjunct Neptune right before she moves into Aries to be full. I'm like in the ocean, just opening myself up, communing with the sharks, communing with these massive waves, feeling my mortality, feeling my smallness. Not so egoic that I don't think that I could get swallowed whole, that I couldn't get taken down, but being in surrender to it. Feeling that there is no way that I could ever be abandoned. You know, there's no way that I am alone, even in death. So I do think that when we allow that part of us to really just be held in that knowing and free and not shame its desires, it can bring such maturity. It can bring that, like I said, refinement. There's one word, refinement. Let any sort of blockages, let any sort of things that challenge wake us up. How is this an invitation to refine? How is this an invitation to mature that fire, to grow something with it? Yeah, and again, I've said this in the Mars retrograde video, and I'll just say it again. It's like really calling, you know, that warrior, calling that part of you that pushes forward, that is an allyship to something, yourself, your magic, the whole, that you are an allyship of, that fire to push through and do something, become something, create something, bring it home into the space that is just completely held, knowing its worth. My queen keeps calling my inner masculine, my inner warrior home. You know, you are so worthy. You are so fucking beautiful. What you give is beautiful. You don't have to move out of your center. I will never abandon you, you know? It's like, come home to me. And when you externalize, when you reach out, when you penetrate, when you move, when you speak, let it come from your center, let it come from your heart, and know when to contain. There's nothing to prove when you don't abandon yourself, and when you fucking have grabbed a hold of all those parts that have been shamed or called dirty, and allow it to be humbled. Sometimes we need to change it, but we don't need to shame it, you know? Anyways, on that note, may your fire be so nurtured in this time. You know, as she opposes the sun in Libra, as we prepare for this Libra season, then moving into Scorpio, it is all about attunement to others. It is all about balance and justice and understanding ourselves inside of the whole and the roles and the other. But we have to come from a place that is fully connected to our desires, because otherwise those relationships get codependent, they get manipulative, because there's a blind spot to our own intentions, motives, and desires, because we think it would be easier if it's like, it's for you, I'm just caretaking you and everyone else, and I'm oblivious of why I'm doing this and where I'm coming from. No. Let's get real with where we're coming from, so that we can heal any shame and lack of confidence and lack of worthiness around it, so that we can move from a place of self-worth, so we can move from a place of humility. You know, people are so talking about Aries being this, you know, egotistical, and it's not humble and all these things, but it's like, you know what? Aries is so fucking humble, because you have to be so courageous and so willing to be like a fool, literally, to step out on the ledge and just do it. You know, so much of that Aries part of me is the willingness to just like give and do and try and look like a fool, fall on my head over and over again in front of hundreds of people, you know? But I get good at whatever I do, because it's like that courage to just do it and do it again and do it again, and trust itself, know itself, allows for the competence to be created, allows for the humility and the humbling to build something up. Yeah. So anyways, on that note, let go of what needs to let go of. Reclaim your energy. Take care of the leaks in your field. Hone in your relationships. Bring your needs and your desires into the relationship. Get your needs met in a direct way. Let go of codependence and unworthiness and overgiving and all of those things. And allow yourself to, heal your shame. It's going to make your expression, your actions, everything so much more in service to everyone around you if you don't shut yourself down, contort yourself, and shame yourself. It's okay to build ourselves up. It's okay to nurture and build our individuality, our ego, and our desires up, so that we can be that much more in service. Okay? All right. Blessings on this full moon.